Hello everybody, it's Wyron here with another bit of Total War Warhammer 2 Quick Match gameplay. This time around we are on Galbaraz, playing as the forces of the Vampire Coast against the Wood Elves. And in a recent video, I was rather clear in saying that I do think this is a really bad matchup for the Vampire Coast. There are several factions in this game that have very respectable medium-range firepower. The most notable ones, of course, being Empire, Wood Elves, and High Elves. And Dwarves, I suppose, actually is a fourth, though they're much less mobile than the others, which makes this a bit more of an issue for them. But those mid-range factions tend to kind of pound the hell out of Vampire Coast, because ultimately artillery is not going to do enough for you to shut down masses of light infantry, and your own shooting does not have the range nor stopping power to deal with them, and it will just get overwhelmed and overrun, and you can't really run away with the Vampire Coast on a kite. So, yeah, it's kind of tough. So I went into this matchup figuring that my opponent might do some kitey shenanigans. He might try to overwhelm me with cav, he might have some light infantry, and I figured, you know, I wanted to make a build to take the fight to my enemy. So I did bring two Morngul Haunters, so you can see them here. This whole build is built essentially to try to pressure my opponent. For the front line, we do have two Morngul Haunters. These guys are vanguarded up a bit. They do have a cool aura, the Chilling Aura, which is also on the Mortis engine, as well as the Chillgeists, not the Mortis engine, the Claw of Nagash, the Regiment for Round Mortis engine. They do have the Hunger, and I gave both Foe Seekers so that they could gap close a little faster on units like Deepwood Scouts, Way Watchers, units like that, which I anticipated my opponent would bring. To back them up, we actually have 3 units of Scurvy Dogs. These guys, of course, not basically just a crappier Direwolf that's a bit cheaper, which I personally think makes them better, because you don't really need great stats, you just want them to be quick and cheap. These guys, of course, once again, to harry and pressure my opponent. We also do have the Regiment of Renown, Lamprey's Revenge here, who are providing their regen, decent mobility, decent tankiness, and once again, just to keep continuously pressure and pursue my opponent, so they can't sort of stop and take collect his bearings and really focus units down correctly. Finally, we do have a Necrofex Colossus as well as Count Noctilus over here. Count Noctilus is mounted on Necrofex himself. Obviously, we wanted those summons. I did want Maelkos Miasma, Invocation of Nehek, Drown Dead, the Bombardment, of course, Wraith Storm, and finally I did want Curse of Undeath as well as Smoke and Mirrors to try to gap close my opponent faster. I figured if my opponent's forced to flee, he's not really going to be able to target his archers all that well. It's going to be much more difficult because archers will, if you turn them on fire at will, they're just going to fire at the nearest target. They're not necessarily going to fire at Noctilus, who you might want to snipe out or whatever. But second of all, the Necrofex Colossi can fire on the move, which is awesome in my opinion against Wood Elves, because it means I can be approaching my opponent, forcing him to keep running, and at the same time pounding him from range, reducing his model count continuously and making him much less effective against me. Finally, for the front line, we do have a few zombie pirates with pole arms just to kind of muck my opponent up if he went with a heavy sort of infantry or cav build. My opponent did go with a bit of a hybrid comp, definitely not full kitey, definitely not looking to cheese me out in the same style I did, for example, in my recent video with just masses of ranged shooting. But he does have 3 units of Deepwood Scouts vanguarded ahead, who I don't actually spot initially. They are backed by Orion over here, who does have the Cloak of Isha, the Horn of the Wild Hunt, doesn't have his bombardments, which is a little surprising, Foe Seeker, and otherwise I think that's it for him. But definitely Orion, no pushover, he's unbreakable, he's got Frenzy. He will honestly gut Count Noctilus or Necrofex if he gets him close. Definitely no pushover. Multiple units of Eternal Guard with shields also making up my opponent's infantry line, backed up by 2 War Dancers who will obviously mince through the vast majority of Vampire Coast troops. Finally, a Spellslinger of Life here with Earthblood and Regrowth and Life Bloom. Unfortunately, my opponent made a bit of a mistake here, brought Blessing of the Ancients. This isn't exactly a forested map, I wouldn't really bother with that, but oh well, it happens. Finally, on the flank, some Wild Riders, and 2 Wild Riders with shields over there. So definitely a lot of tools to potentially pressure my backline, a backline that does not exist. And you can actually see the Deepwood Scouts there doing quite a bit of damage. These are non-AP archers, guys. Keep that in mind. And they managed to take Noctilus down by a good 1,000 HP before I'm really getting into position to pressure him. But that said, you can see over here the Morngul is on top of him. The 2 Scurvy Dogs, not Direwolves, are on top of these Deepwood Scouts. They're getting terrified. My opponent actually pops Regrowth there, but it's too little too late. They are actually going to shatter here on 14 models, so pretty nuts. We've gotten a huge, very convenient engagement right off the bat and shattered an important unit for my opponent. We're now getting summoned with zombie pirate deckhands. This Morngul is pushing through, using that slowing aura to prevent my opponent from escaping. Even with the Horn of the Wild Hunt, he's simply not fast enough. Meantime, bombardment going down on the Spellslinger of Life, and things definitely looking okay for us. Now in the front line, the War Dancers will mulch through my 4 zombies, but the zombies do have a lot of HP. It's one of the few redeeming qualities. So the War Dancers, while they'll do it efficiently HP-wise, they're not going to do it efficiently time-wise. Unfortunately, the Lamprey's Revenge here does actually lose a model to the Lord of the Wild Hunt, absolute jerk, this guy, but he killed one of those poor crabs there. But now he's hunting poor Count Noctilus with popping Arc and Conduit, trying to stay alive. As the Morngulls push into the backline, pursuing, pressuring these troops. Over here, the Morngull, with some help from the Scurvy Dogs, actually going to be able to pick apart these Wild Riders, really munching on these filthy Elves, which aren't able to really sneak past. They've only got 55 speed compared to his 54 when he's on him, and so they're really not going to be able to escape, especially with the Scurvy Dogs nibbling on their heels every time. In the meantime, here in the back, you can see the Morngull Haunter getting a bit pounded, so we're actually going to bust through with our Necroflex Colossus, as well as Count Noctilus, looking to pressure and break this back line. You can see the cannonballs flying out from our Lord, and he's just destroying his Wild Rider, hitting with Malcos Miasma, getting that benefit to speed. And in the meantime, you know, my opponent's healer in full route. Over here, the Necroflex Colossus is going to be able to suddenly push through and go after the Dupewood Scouts. And anytime the Lamprey's Revenge, these guys are munching through this infantry very, very efficiently, doing a good job against these War Dancers and the Guard. They've got monstrous melee stats. 623 melee defense is just crazy. It means that even Eternal Guard just don't have a good chance. Only Orion here has a good chance of hitting these guys consistently. So they're going to do some really good work. And we actually pull them away here, get a few shotgun blasts, and we're going to do a little bit of cycle charging with our delightful little hermit crabs here. You can see they're kind of wobbling there. Their shotgun blasts, you know, not doing the most damage, but definitely doing something. You can see the Screaming Ladies are going to have a lot more to scream about in short order. Elsewhere, in the meantime, the Scurvy Dogs running my opponent down over there. Unfortunately, they're the last unit of Scurvy Dogs left alive, but we are going to be able to nuke down the Spellslinger's life here, get some more summons, and we're constantly pressuring my opponent. You can't see the Morngull is in the pits. Orion is not really able to get through all this chaff and crap and get on top of Nocti, who's still got 2,000 HP. That constant stream of fire from the Deepwood Scouts, unfortunately, definitely a little frustrating, so we're going to once again detach this Colossus going after them. While Count Nocti is going to try to bust through and push in, but unfortunately at this point he's running out of leadership. He's starting to struggle. He's getting focused so heavily. He's not going to be able to recover. He's not going to be able to stick around. He's actually going to get gunned down here, getting harassed by these mean Wild Riders. He is trying his very best. He's trying his darndest, but it's just not going to work. And at this point, Noctilus is going to start crumbling and dying. Taking it over, looking at the battlefield, though, you can see our delightful crab people here up to 68 kills against Eternal Guard and War Dancer, just munching through them, forcing them off with the help of the Morngull, just forcing a full retreat from my opponent there. So a very big win for myself. And this is now going to open up a much better situation for me. Certainly we're going to lose Count Noctilus over here. He is going to keel over dead shortly. You can see I get one more summon of zombie prior to deckhands off before the giant staggers and falls. He loses a leg, but it's crazy. And sends these guys flying. But in the meantime, the Morgul is in there. He's going to be able to rout off the Wild Riders. He's going to be able to rout off the Deepwood Scouts over here. My Hounds getting in on the Deepwood Scouts as well. So suddenly my opponent is in a very bad situation. Certainly he's killed Noctilus, which was his main goal, it seemed, by the focus fire. But he's lost his archers. The archers are about to be in full retreat. These Deepwood Scouts are not going to stick around for long. They're being pressured by the Morgul Haunter, who's healing this whole time because he does have the hunger. Over here, the Scurvy Dogs managed to rout off those Deepwood Scouts, and now they're going to be able to run a sort of an interference or run a bit of a sweeping advance through these guys, get into these Deepwood Scouts, get onto these Wild Riders, just force unit after unit off the field. Put my opponent in a bit of a grim predicament, so that's really nifty. Meantime, over here, this Necroflex Colossus is back online, firing away at this clump of... actually, I was trying to pop the Spellslinger of Life, but he's whiffing. It's a bit of a bad shot, this poor guy. But suddenly, you know, the Lamprey's Revenge, we forced off those Eternal Guard. We're now going to swing back in. You can see these guys 90 kills now, definitely doing a respectable amount of work. The Necroflex Colossus here still failing to hit the Spellslinger of Life over there, unfortunately. But, you know, the Morgul is able to outrun Orion, who's just not fast enough. He's only got 54 speed, and this guy can slow him down. He's throwing some javelins at me, but honestly, it's a bit of a waste. We've got 30% missile resist. We've got reasonable tankiness, so we'll hold out okay. You can see the Scurvy Dogs here, despite disintegrating, are going to catch and force off these Wild Riders. And my opponent is forced to waste a heal there over on the Spellslinger. So all in all, we're in a pretty good spot at this point. You can see our Colossus stomping on the Eternal Guard a bit. You can see he actually drops out his abandoned ship going down with the zombie pirate deckhand summon as he finally loses half his HP. We are trying to pop the Spellslinger of Life in the face, but the Necroflex is just not able to hit. But with all these summons still running amok, degenerating very, very slowly, we're in a good spot. You can see the Morgul Haunter here destroying these War Dancers, and we still do, and don't forget, we still have these Lamprey's Revenge, who, after turning about, have managed to force off these War Dancers for good, and are now coming back for the final fight. So, a bit of fast forward action here. You can see we were trying to pop this Spellslinger of Life in the face, force her off for good, though it's not really working out. She's not quite wanting to retreat, but we have forced out my opponent's heal to make it kind of wasted against her, or on her. And now we're going to be able to sort of collapse on this pocket of infantry, try to get rid of them, get them off the field. We're basically ignoring Orion. We don't want to fight him. You can see the Necrofex there, getting 69 kills now, doing a great job, kind of waddling away from Orion there, who is now in a very bad straits. You can see the Spellslinger of Life there on 3 kills, being sad and way forlorn out of position. This one, my opponent really doesn't have any tools. He does still have Orion, but suddenly it's going to be complete army losses for him. These Eternal Guard and War Dancers will not stick around for long. Orion now down to 2400 HP. Certainly he does have the Cloak of Isha. Certainly he could still stick around for a while, but my opponent decides to gracefully bow at this point. So, going over the kill count, we can look at the kill feed here, and the kill counts here, and see just how some units did well, and how this build that was super aggressive, as far as Vampire Coast is concerned. It's very difficult for this faction to be aggressive, because of how slow they are. And they're slow even compared to dwarves. Like dwarf rangers, if you can go aggressive with dwarves because you bring miners, you bring rangers, you get a huge vanguard deployment. Potentially your opponent doesn't have. It's hard for your opponent to anticipate that. It's not hard to anticipate for this faction if you're going vanguard because you're going to switch to the Sartosa faction. But even then, the tools are not there. Sartosan pirates and Morningals are not really what dream vanguards are made of. It's okay, but not something to write home about. But with this, you can get sort of an aggressive build. We were able to pressure my opponent, not really allow him the time to super well focus down the Necrofexes. Certainly, he did manage to pick him off, at least Noctilus, eventually. But by then, we had shut down and slaughtered the Deepwood Scouts. We got some good ambushes in with the Mortal Haunters, with the Scurvy Dogs. And the Lamprey's Revenge performing incredibly well. Took a lot of damage. These guys definitely worth their salt. Certainly, they cost a lot. They're a 1500 gold unit, but they really made mincemeat of those Elven troops, and I was pretty pleased. Now, for the build otherwise, I do think, obviously, this might not, against this full cheese build, like the one I brought, this build could still struggle. Certainly, you've got great potential for harass, but the simple fact of the matter is, if your opponent decides to spam a bunch of scouts, getting into that, with your Morngal Hunters only have 50-some speed, and your opponent can throw, like, Wild Riders and stuff into the fray to just stall you out, it could still potentially be very difficult. But I do think that if you're going in against Wood Elves, one of the better ways to deal with it without just camping and hoping your opponent doesn't pick you apart, if you want to be dictating the pace of the battle, essentially, I think this is a decent way to do it. Build sort of like this one. Now, for my opponent, certainly this wasn't necessarily that gimmicky of build. I do think it was very well balanced, and I think against the roster that's more artillery heavy, this could work because you've got the Wild Riders to really munch through those backlines. You've got the War Dancers to mulch through the frontline troops. Deepwood Scouts to give you a little bit of support. Orion, of course, for his AP and anti-large, and a Spellslinger of Life, who's a respectable healer herself. So you get some decent units in here. I don't think it's necessarily a bad composition. The lack of AP, I think you could struggle against more AP heavy factions or builds. Or armored builds. This isn't necessarily the only reasonably armored unit here was the Lamprey's Revenge, but if your opponent decided to go with, say, Leviathans or Claustra or units like that, and then I could see this being a problem. But regardless, I do think this is a pretty respectable build, and yeah, I was pretty pleased with this. So I do hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you found it informative and hopefully gave you some ideas. If you're struggling with this matchup from the Vampire Coast perspective, maybe this will help you. If you enjoyed it, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, share down below. If you have any comments, any criticism, any questions, be sure to post them down, and I'll respond as soon as I can. I do thank you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye for now.